Pallavi, welcome again to ITV Gold. Thank you so much for giving us your time here.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoy the show.
Of course, we have to have you because, again, a lot is happening in the nation and I have a lot of questions for you today. So let's dig right into it. My first question is not something that I would have asked you because we are here to discuss Georgia politics today. But with what has happened in the nation, I have to ask you, could you respond to last Wednesday's event that happened at the Capitol? How did that make you feel? And politically, how did that look for you?
That's definitely a very loaded question. I watched it unfurl as it happened. I had CNN on. I watched Secret Service come in, grab Mike Pence and take him away. And then I watched Capitol Police come in and ask people to start hunkering down. My very first reaction was comparing that to the BLM protests that happened throughout not just this past year, but really when the movement started. We've seen instances where as soon as there is some kind of just ad about BLM protests happening, before a single protester can get to that spot, we have police and military and tanks and helicopters, just everything ready to go. And compared to that, we've been seeing for days on Twitter and Parler and Facebook, people, Trump supporters, really, I don't want to parse words, Trump supporters coming out and saying that they wanted to storm the Capitol, they wanted to overthrow the government, and we saw this complete lack of preparation. On one hand, I am extremely thankful that no member of Congress, no Republican, no Democrat, no staff got hurt, but on the other side, it feels like sheer luck. It feels like complete dumb luck that they weren't able to get to the people that they really wanted to get to, and I don't even want to think about what could have happened if they got their hands on AOC or Nancy Pelosi or Mike Pence, who they wanted to hang. So I'm personally still pretty shaken up about it. I know people who work as staff. I'm friends with a few lawmakers. The entire time that we couldn't get in touch with them, I was extremely worried about their safety. And politically, it really amazes me in a bad way that now I have to worry about the safety of my friends who work at state capitals. I was a staffer at the Georgia State Capitol for 3 years. And knowing that the people who are walking in today to pass laws and pass bills and debate the way government is supposed to do, the fact that they have to be surrounded by protection and by tanks and police officers, it really shakes me in a pretty bad way.
Pallavi, what were these staffers' experience at the Capitol, if you can share some?
I won't go too into details because this is not something that I told them that I would share publicly, but people were definitely scared. They were scared for their lives. They could hear the mob. They knew that there was at one point just one door. I got chills just saying that out loud, that there was just one door separating them. The mob got into the Capitol. The time where the Capitol Police ended up shooting one of the members of the mob who was trying to get into the door. That was the last barricade. They were hunkered down in that room. So they were scared. A lot of them are still shaken up. I am immensely proud of them for going back and doing their jobs, because I simply don't know if I would have been able to do that. But they were scared, and they shouldn't be scared. Going into the U.S. Capitol and serving as staff for a congressman or for a senator, this should not be a scary job. It's already a very, very high stress and sometimes low paying job. And people who do it really do it because they want to serve the community. And the fact that they were afraid for their lives really says something about who we have become as a country.
Right now there are talks about impeaching President Trump as well as invoking the 25th Amendment. How are you looking at this? Is this politically even advisable with so many few days left for his presidency? How important is that step according to you?
It's extremely important. Trump needs to not only be impeached, but he needs to be investigated for crimes. I don't make any bones about that, because there has to be accountability for what happened. I mean, I don't remember Watergate. I wasn't old enough and I wasn't in this country. But every time I ask somebody about, how does this compare to Watergate, which really is considered one of the biggest political scandals of our lifetimes, one of the responses I got was Watergate doesn't have a body count. we now have 4 people who died who were part of the mob, and 2 policemen who died who were trying to protect our lawmakers from the mob. And all of it, we don't need an investigation at this point because everything happened on camera. Trump incited people on camera. There are other Republican members of Congress who incited people on camera. There were people who went in and live streamed themselves committing all these crimes. And it all has to come back, I think it was Donald Trump who at one point said that the buck stops with the president when President Obama was in office. And now we need accountability. And the Republicans are really good at doing things in a very speedy way. We saw that when we had a Supreme Court opening and they rushed through that. And we have more days left at this point compared to that. So I think, I've heard arguments about how it's not the right time and, what the message it sends. I have yet to hear a good argument about why impeachment should not happen on the merits of the fact. Trump committed impeachable offenses. He needs to be held accountable because if we don't hold him accountable, we have left the door open for something like this to happen again. And if we leave the door open for that, it could be more deadly. We don't know that. Like I said, it was sheer luck that more people didn't die. So yes, I'm completely in favor of impeachment. I'm completely in favor of invoking the 25th. I think at one point you have to put your foot down and say actions have consequences, because if not, you're complicit if it ever happens again.
The FBI is warning right now all 50 capitals in the country are at stake during the inauguration day on January 20th. Do you have any information on what's happening in Georgia? What have you heard?
Not a whole lot. I was by the Capitol just a few hours ago. Security is beefed up. Like I said, there are police cars everywhere. There are barricades everywhere, and SWAT tanks. What it looked like. I think members know that they should be just on high alert, but not threatened. But like I said before, it's a damning thing to say that, and I am now afraid of the people whose campaigns I helped win and send them to that Capitol. The fact that I'm afraid for their safety is a horrible thing. But I do think that that's a building that's highly guarded. You can't walk in without going through a metal detector. And I think now that we know that these things are being planned, they're being planned out in the open. Twitter has taken down a few accounts and Parler is down, but we know that there's that infrastructure there right now where something like this could happen. And I do think that our law enforcement is on high alert to make sure that none of these people can get to any of our lawmakers.
Well, here's to hoping that day just goes peaceful, because we really need peace in this world. Talking about Georgia, I have to ask you about January 6th again. I know it was a really difficult day on all of us at the Capitol, but it was a day of celebration for Democrats in Georgia with the Senate runoff. I know you worked really closely with both the campaigns for the Democrats that were running, John Ossoff and Reverend Warnock. Tell me about how that Senate runoff was after the presidential elections, and what did you all focus on in order to get these votes?
Yeah, I was hoping that we would get some more time to celebrate. The election happened January 5th, and then it seemed like hours later when we were just starting to celebrate because the numbers had finally come in. We were watching the scene just unfurl at the Capitol. I would like to thank you for asking that. I would like to take us back a few days and into a kind of a more of a joyous occasion. It didn't happen overnight. If you look at Georgia, if you look at the way our elections have happened, though not this past presidential election, but the one before, we lost by I believe 10 points, and then Hillary lost by 5 points. So we've been closing the gap every single election cycle, and hasn't happened by chance. You look at Stacey Abrams and just the organization that she has put into the state over the past decade. We've had just increased amounts of voter registration. We had a law passed recently that says that anytime you have any kind of interaction with a government agency, you get registered to vote. That's helped our voter registration go through the roof. And then you have these organizations who've just done an amazing job of going out there and making sure that people come out to vote. If there was like one group that I could really give credit to, it would be the groups that have really focused on Black voter participation, especially in rural Georgia. Looking at those numbers, it was just this moment of like, aha, we did it. But looking at those numbers, you look at the numbers of Asian Americans who went out and voted. It really showed that if you go out and talk to people who have been disenfranchised, or they're apathetic because no one's ever talked to them, it really showed us that kind of work is what does it in the end. It also helped that, that was the time where Trump came out and kept talking about how the election was rigged and how it didn't matter and how he got cheated. And I think his tantrums ended up contributing to a suppressed turnout from the Republican side. Because, I don't blame them at the end of the day if someone keeps telling you over and over and over again that their vote didn't count. Why go out and vote again? So it was everything kind of going right for us. It was amazing minority participation. It was Republicans kind of shooting themselves in the foot. It was two really, really good candidates. If you look at the fact that we have a Black pastor as well as a Jewish journalist, John Ossoff, who I consider a friend, is 33 years old. He's my age. The fact that the millennials kind of, they did their TikToks, but they felt heard, and people go out and they vote when you feel like they have something going on for them, and they have something at stake. And we just had everything just went the right way for us. And I'm really, really glad and really proud of us that we capitalized on that.
Do you think communities of color are the biggest reason Georgia has been flipped?
Yes. It's a very short and sweet answer to that. Yes, I think we've done the work for years and years and years. And when I say we, I give so much credit to Stacey Abrams and just the infrastructure she put in, and the fact that she kept going even after Democrats kept losing. Because it's very easy to kind of look at it now and say, look, we won, this works. She was somebody who didn't falter. She didn't doubt herself, and she didn't doubt her strategy when we were losing, because she saw that the gaps were getting smaller and smaller. And I think when you invest in communities of color as Democrats, and not just during election day or during election week to get them out to vote, but make sure that when people are elected, that the policies that they're enacting, the policies that they're fighting for and fighting against, are with communities of color in mind. I think when people realize that they're really being thought about by government entities, they're going to come out and vote because they feel like they're being heard. So I absolutely, hands down, think. There's no way you can look at who came out and voted, and you look at the numbers of Black voters, and you look at the numbers of Asian American voters. It's very hard to not understand that that is the one thing that kind of took us over the line.
How has the response been towards both these candidates from the Republican side post the runoff?
A little bit of the same. I tweeted a little bit against Kelly Loeffler as well as David Perdue. Kelly Loeffler came out and she conceded, but then she said something along the lines of, we're going to still fight the radical left. And this was hours after the insurrection. And I think that could have been her moment to take down the temperature a little bit. And she still chose to demonize the left. David Perdue in his concession speech or written statement wrote something along the lines of, we won in November, but we couldn't win, which is a lie. He did not win in November. Nobody won in November, right. Which is why we had a runoff. I still think that they could have taken the moment and they could have shown grace. They could have told us, they could have led the way to show us that we could come together as a state, as just Americans, and they couldn't rise to it. So I think it's more of the same. And at this point, it's just about enacting good policy without really looking at what makes us look friendly or polite as a party.
Pallavi, when you look at both these campaigns that happened, and again, you have a lot of insight into it, how did their programs or the way they were functioning change right after the presidential elections when they knew they were about to go into this runoff? Were there strategies that were changed to make sure that most of Georgia that is voting blue continues to vote blue?
Absolutely. I think this is where the Democratic Party of Georgia did a really good job. There was a great coordinated campaign between the party and the two campaigns, the two Senate campaigns. We did have a third race on the ballot, but the two Senate campaigns, as well as the party, really coordinated things to make sure that we weren't kind of repeating efforts without having the right getting the right rewards for it. So when people were knocking at doors, they were knocking for all the candidates. When we were making phone calls, we were making phone calls for all the candidates. There was a really good just infrastructure to get all of these, campaigns to coordinate. And that allowed us in a short span of time, because runoff, you just simply don't have the kind of time that you do for a runoff with a general election. And with the fact that we have a pandemic going on, it really allowed us to make sure that we were hitting more doors and hitting more phones, and doing it in a timely fashion. So all credit to the Democratic Party of Georgia and their coordinated campaign on that.
Pallavi, I'm sure the fight for Democrats hasn't ended in Georgia yet. And I'm sure the next 4 to 6 years are going to be changing for what we're not calling the purple state. What does Georgia need to do in order to sustain being blue, according to you?
I think we continue doing the work, right? So we know what helped us. So we continue reaching out to communities of color. We continue to make sure that we hold vulnerable communities in our minds when we're enacting policies. And we don't let up, because these are not just election year tactics. You have to make sure that you make people feel like they're being heard throughout the year. Because when somebody has a bill they can't pay, or somebody's getting evicted, that's happening year round. It doesn't matter if that's happening on election year. If they're hurting, they're hurting. So I think as Democrats, we just need to make sure that we keep people in mind and just stay real in terms of what people actually want. So we're the party that needs to make sure that everybody has access to healthcare, and everybody has access to affordable healthcare, that they're able to send their kids to a school, that they're able to give their kids a better lives that they grew up living. And on the Republican side, where there's already been a bill filed at our Capitol that's for open carry, which means, and the bill particularly says that any person can take a assault rifle or a long rifle out into any public area. We're at a time where a pandemic has ravaged some of our communities. A lot of us have lost friends and family, and a lot of us are worried about schools. So we need to make sure that we are keeping the issues that people are really worried about, keeping that in mind, and really just making sure that our policies and our bills and our laws reflect that.
And for these two senators, Pallavi, according to you, what's going to be on their agenda for this year? Are you familiar with what their focus is going to be for the state of Georgia?
I think a lot of it is going to have to do with making sure that we can come out of this pandemic in any kind of real way. So the $2,000 checks, that would really help people, that would keep people in their apartments, make sure they're not getting evicted. So I think once we kind of get out of this rollout of vaccines and just the stimulus, we're going to continue looking at things like healthcare and making sure that kids have good schools to go to. I'm not super familiar with exactly what their 100-day plan is, but knowing the two campaigns, I'm positive that not only are they going to enact good policies, they're very transparent as people. They've been very transparent as campaigns, and they're very accountable to the people who put them there. So I'm looking forward to things like town halls and really good constituency outreach, which we haven't seen at all from the two incumbents that left their offices recently.
And what other elections are you preparing for, Pallavi? I know you just finished this whole campaign, and you are a political strategist as well. What are you focused on for the rest of this year?
I was hoping to turn off my brain from that a little bit, but 2021 is going to be a year of municipal elections here in Georgia, which is a little bit different because in Georgia, we don't, all our municipals are mostly nonpartisan. But that also that doesn't mean that we shouldn't find them important. These are the people who decide how much our police departments are going to be funded or how our sidewalks are going to be dealt with. So it's going to be a year where we really get down to, the actual roots of politics and make people understand that even though municipals aren't really as sexy as campaign life can go, those are campaigns that people really need to pay attention to because how their tax dollars are being spent really matters in municipal elections. 2022 has started off here in Georgia. We know Brian Kemp is going to be running again. We have Charlie Bailey, who's calling for a rematch from his 2018 campaign to be the Attorney General of Georgia. We recently found out that the current Attorney General from Georgia chaired this organization that helped put together the Stop the Steal protest that ended up being a complete terrorist attack on our capital. So I think Georgia is really looking forward to right some wrongs from 2018. I have my fingers very crossed for an Abrams candidacy. I think she would be wonderful. And if she decides to do that, I'm absolutely looking forward to that.
I just have 2 more questions left for you here. This is about the incoming administration that, of course, you are supporting. What are some of your expectations from them? I know President-elect Joe Biden has a very particular agenda for his first 100 days, focused mainly on COVID-19, the pandemic, economic recovery, and as well as getting kids back into school. I know that's sort of the agenda for many states, but how are you looking at it?
I'm looking forward to the vaccination rollout, really. I know here in Georgia, it's been a complete disaster. I've heard from people left and right that they're trying to get appointments from their parents because they fall into the group of people who can get the first dose right now, and they're completely unable to because there just hasn't been any coordination from the federal level with our counties. So I'm looking forward to a smoother rollout. I'm looking forward to people getting both doses in their arms, because as of right now, until we get a hold on the pandemic, normal life is not coming back for any one of us. So once that's done, I want to make sure I'm looking forward to the administration handing the stimulus in a way that helps the most needy among us. So right now, we've seen Joe Manchin say that he's not really looking forward to another round of $2,000 checks for people who may not need it. I'm looking to see that this administration gives the money to people who need it to stay in their apartments and not get evicted. So right now, I think he's absolutely correct in making sure that that is his priority, because anything else that could come after that won't happen smoothly until we get a hold of this. So I agree with him in terms of making that his administration's first priority.
Yes, definitely. Well, finally, I would love for you to give a comment back to the teams that you worked with, all the Democrats that put it together for Georgia to truly become blue, 3-3. I would love for you to give that message out.
Oh, I don't think that's an honor. The fact that I get to talk to them and tell them how thankful I am is a complete honor. People here have worked for so hard, and we've done it without any kind of attention being paid to us. For the longest time, we were called a ruby red state, and no one really thought anything of it. And we saw people from just thousands and thousands of organizers, not let that get to them. Go out and make a difference. We did it by paying attention to people who normally feel really left out by the process. And it was such a great group effort. We had everybody from organizers to staffers and political elected officials just rowing in the same direction. A lot of times we call ourselves the big tent party. This was the big boat party, and we rowed in the same direction, and we got that win. I don't think I could really do justice to just how grateful I am to be just a tiny part of this movement.
Yes, for sure. Well, thank you so much for your time here on ITV Go, Pallavi. I look forward to having you yet again with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.